Hey guys, it's Sam Shaw, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. In this video, I want to walk you through the best way to prepare for your investment banking technical interviews. Okay, so to start, first we need to understand that there are four major areas to the investment banking technical interview. You need to understand accounting and three financial statements, income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statements. You need to understand valuation methodologies, such as things like trading comps, transaction comps, and the discounted cash flow. Then you need to understand mergers and acquisitions. Then you need to understand leverage buyouts. Okay, so those are the four major areas. And also, the other important thing to know is you should learn these four areas in the order that I just laid out, right? The reason why you should learn these areas in that order is because these concepts build on top of each other. Okay, so you always start with accounting and the three statements first, because if you don't have a solid understanding of what each of these statements are and what's on these statements and how they all relate to each other, you're not going to understand anything else, because all the other stuff that I talked about, valuation, mergers and acquisitions, leverage buyouts, they require you to be able to interpret the financial statements, right? So it's kind of like learning how to crawl before you can walk and learning how to walk before you can run, right? So we always start with the three financial statements, okay? And I'm not talking about, what you learn in your financial accounting class, like debit this and credit that. That's how accountants think about it. Investment bankers don't think about that, okay? Investment bankers are thinking about how do each type of business transactions actually flow through each of the three statements, all right? So once you've gotten a good understanding around that, the very next thing you're going to have to learn is valuation methodologies. Now, valuation is at the core of pretty much everything you do in investment banking, because whether you're raising capital for a company and they're selling equity in their business, they have to be able to value that equity, right? Or if you're helping a company with an M&A deal where they're either buying or selling a business, you still need to be able to value the business that's being acquired, right? And so that's why valuation is so important. And there are three different types of valuation methodologies that you really have to be familiar with. Again, trading comps, transaction comps, and discounted cash flow. But the most important one, probably the discounted cash flow, just because there's so many different things that they can possibly ask you in these interviews, okay, about the discounted cash flow specifically. Now, once you learn the valuation methodologies, then and only then will you move on to learn about mergers and acquisitions, right? Because when you think about mergers and acquisitions, the first input that you need for the deal is how much am I going to pay for this business? Now, you can't answer the question how much I'm going to pay for this business if you don't know how to value the business, right? So that's why we learn valuation first, and then we learn about mergers and acquisitions. And then once you're familiar with mergers and acquisitions and accretion dilution specifically and how that works and what it means, then and only then would you move on to leverage buyouts. Okay, and so leverage buyouts is just another form of M&A, but instead of the buyer being a strategic acquirer, which just means it's a company acquiring another company, like Facebook acquiring Instagram or Facebook acquiring WhatsApp, that's a strategic deal, right? In a leveraged buyout, the buyer is actually a private equity firm. So it's not a company buying another company, it's a private equity fund buying a company. So those deals are called leveraged buyouts because private equity firms typically use debt in a transaction. Okay, so because they use debt, the transactions tend to be more complex than just your typical M&A deal. But there are still a lot of similarities between how to think about these two types of transactions. But that's typically the most advanced topic in an investment banking technical interview. So if you learn these topics in that order, you're also going to ensure that you're spending your time in the most efficient way possible from a probability weighting standpoint. Probability meaning how likely is it that you're going to get tested on one of these concepts. You're absolutely, almost definitely always going to get tested on the three statements. You're almost always going to get tested on the valuation stuff. And then the M&A stuff is a little bit less likely. And then the LBO stuff is probably like the most advanced, right? So that's why we always teach our clients these four topic areas in the order that I just laid out. And so no matter how much time you have left in your investment banking recruiting process, you're going to make sure that you're using that time in the best way possible and that you're covering the most ground. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. I want you to think about, hey, how well versed are you in each of these four areas? And if you're not as comfortable as you should be yet in any of these one topics, make sure you do them in order and start going through it. And if you have questions about it, reach out to us and we're happy to talk to you about that as well.